Hi again, this is 6th grade math, chapter 5 test review, and we are now looking at lesson 5-5, and this is multiplying with mixed numbers. All right, this is that thing that I think is so fun, this and dividing. I'm sure y'all agree. I'm going to write down just a few problems for us to work on, and then we'll work our way through them. Okay, and I'll do one more. 5 times 3 and 2 11s. Okay, let's go up to the top. Here we cannot multiply with mixed numbers, so here we really do have to use our improper fractions. So we're going to have 1/3 times, we're going to change this to an improper fraction. 1 times 2 is 2 plus 1 is 3 over 2. Now we simply multiply, and we get to multiply the top and the bottom. No need for common denominators at all when multiplying and dividing fractions. So 1 times 3 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, but we always must reduce. So here I see that my greatest common, greatest common factor is 3. That means it's the biggest thing that will go into both of these numbers. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6 twice, and there's my fully reduced fraction. All right, let's try this one. We need to change it to an improper fraction. We're going to multiply going down and then add going up. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. We have 5 halves times 1 times 3 is 3 plus 1 is 4 thirds. Now we get to multiply straight across. 5 times 4 is 20. 2 times 3 is 6. Cannot leave it that way for a final answer. It has to go back to a mixed number. 6 goes into 20 3 times with 2 left over out of the 6. Still can't leave it this way because it's not fully simplified or reduced. So it becomes 3 and 1/3 because 2 was the greatest common factor that went into both of those numbers. 2 went into 2 once, 2 went into 6 3 times. Okay, let's come down here and work this last one. 5 is really a fraction over what number? A 1. 3 times 11 is 33. 34, 35 over 11. Let me double check my math on that. 3 times 11 is 33, 34. Yeah, okay. We can't cross cancel anything here, but look, we could have up here. We could have made this simpler as we went by making this a 1 and that a 2. Do you remember how we do that? We say, what's the greatest common factor there? 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. We don't have anything that we can cross reduce here, though, so we're simply going to have to say, what is 35 times 5? 175. I'll double check my math on that in just a minute. Let's see, where did I get this problem? Let's see, okay. So let me double check my math here. 5 times 5 is 25. 3 times 5 is 15, 17. Okay, so now we have to say how many times does 11 go into 175? I think it goes in 15 times, but let's try that really quickly. 15 times 11. Yeah, it can only go in 15 times. It can't fit in another time. And as you can see, we'll have 10 left over out of 11. So that's our final answer. All right, now we are flipping to lesson 5-6 where we're going to talk about dividing fractions and mixed numbers. Okay, I hope you can say the poem in your head. There's only one difference, and that is instead of multiplying as we did here, we're going to have to divide, which means we really flip the second sucker and multiply. I know you remember that. It's called multiplying by the reciprocal. So remember, the reciprocal is the upside down version of any fraction. So the reciprocal for 4/5 would be 5/4. The reciprocal for 20 21sts would be 21 20ths. All right, I hope I'm not making lots of mistakes here. If so, I hope y'all are seeing past them to know what I meant. All right, so here's our first problem. 4/5 divided by 5. Well, we know that 5 is really a fraction over a 1, and we're going to put it there since we're dealing with fractions. Now, when dividing fractions, don't ask why. Flip that second sucker and multiply. So here we go. 4 25ths. Final answer. I think that's so easy, except that you have to remember to flip and you have to remember to multiply. Nobody can do those things for you. Nobody can remember them for you. If you don't do them on the test, obviously you're going to have some very wrong answers. All right, let's do it again. When dividing fractions, don't ask why. Flip that second sucker and multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4. Can't leave it that way. Change it back to a mixed number. 4 goes into 6 one time with 2 left over. Can't leave it that way because it needs to be reduced to 1/2. All right, that is all that I'm going to do with dividing the fractions. And the last thing, I think there's only one more lesson, maybe 5-7, and it is simply doing equations. Double check. Yeah. It's simply doing equations that are the exact same kind of work. So let's look at that. Let's go to the top of this page. Let's see. 2/3 L equals 14. 2/3 L equals 14. All right, remember that 14 is going to become a 14/1 because we're dealing with fractions. Now, how do we get L alone? Sorry, I know you couldn't see. All right, 14 had to become a 14/1. How do we get L alone? It's multiplied together, so we need to separate by division. But when dividing fractions, don't ask why. Flip that second sucker and multiply. So instead of dividing by 2/3, we're going to multiply by its reciprocal, which is 3/2. Whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other. So L equals 14 times 3. No idea what that is. Let's see, 15, 30, 45. It's probably 42. Yep. Okay, 42 over 2. Can't leave it that way, but here we can tell that this actually divides out evenly, and 42 divided by 2 is 21. Or we could have said how many times does 2 go into that? It goes in 21 times. How many times does 2 go into the 2? It goes in 1 time, and that's the same as our final answer right there. All right, let's try another one. 2x equals 1/3. How do we do this? Well, this time we need to get x alone, but we're dealing with fractions, so I'm going to go ahead and remind myself that this 2 is really a 2/1, and these are multiplied together, so I've got to divide to get rid of it. So I'm going to follow my rule. When dividing fractions, don't ask why. Flip that sucker and multiply. I'm going to do that to both sides, and I'm going to be left with x equals 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, let's see. Let's try another one. 5x over 6. 5x over 6 equals 4. Okay, here, one thing I want you to remember is that this is the same as 5/6 times x. That's all that is 5 times x sitting there on the same line. So you can rewrite it that way, but you certainly don't have to. I also know that 4 is really a 4/1 because I'm dealing with fractions. Now I need to separate 5/6 from x by dividing. I could have done the same thing here without having to move the x over. But instead of dividing, I need to flip that sucker and multiply when we're dealing with fractions, or multiply by the reciprocal. I know that those are going to cancel, and I'm going to be left with x equals 4 times 6, which is 24, over 5. I know I can't leave it in improper fraction form, so it comes out to be 4 4/5. Okay, I think that is it. We have basically run through the whole chapter in 2 videos. Don't forget for the test to, anytime you're dealing with fractions, to go ahead and put that fraction over a 1, like right here. That's going to help. And right here, it looked like a normal 2, but we're dealing with fractions, so if we go ahead and put it over a 1, it helps us keep our fraction mindset. All right, I think that's it. Y'all let me know if you have questions, and I will get these posted for you. All right, have a good night, or actually, you'll get this tomorrow. Have a good day.